Okay, we are recording. And Hannah, would you like to start the introduction on your part?
Absolutely. Congratulations again to the winners. We'll get to that, but I wanted to say that up front. I'm Hannah King. I'm part of the OKdo marketing team, and I work very closely with Rich and Sander. We partnered with Wevolver to do this contest, and just the amount of participation, enthusiasm we received in the community has just been incredible. And so just wanted to thank you guys again. And I can now hand it over to Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all virtually. My name is Richard Curtin. I'm the co-founder and CTO at OKdo. And it's really, really nice to be driving this contest, but also to be talking to you guys today. So excited for that. And why don't I hand over to Sander?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Sander Arts. I'm the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer at OKdo. I'm based out of Silicon Valley. And congratulations. I'm super excited. Yeah.
Great. I think I can take it from here. I'm Tassos. Eric, we have already discussed via emails. I'm the operations manager at Wevolver, and I'm mostly leading engineering challenges like this one to ensure that they are running absolutely smoothly. And we also have our content director, Jessica. Jessica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, all. Great to be here. Super exciting to, congratulate Eric and the team. I helped Tassos with the project, worked with OKdo on the side.
Great, thanks, Jess. Eric, would you like to also introduce yourself and then the rest of the team?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Eric Schleicher. I am in background, at least in prior careers, from enterprise and the data management space. And then, I've landed here after a progression of startups that were originally left corporate world, started a company called Porch, which is about home improvement contractors around the home. Started another company that was developed in digital design, so like algorithmic design, and then started in 2017 Constructive Realities when I realized that like the next big thing was all this spatial data, right? So I already had kind of like a big kind of data goggles on, and so this area of 3D scanning became really fascinating to me, and so started Constructive Realities in 2017, and have just been working to figure out what to do, right? But then also kind of building technical capabilities and partners along the way, and so that's kind of, I guess that's my blurb. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, super technical. And enjoy this stuff like nothing else. So that's I'm excitable and interested and and dedicated. So that's, I think, why we find ourselves here. Justin, I'll let you do yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Justin. I kind of met Eric through some mutual VR tracking localization projects that I work on. My background's computer vision and robotics, so I'm doing a lot of like the firmware and stuff on the cameras and some of the computer vision-y calibration stuff that we're pretty excited about. So I've got kind of a more researchy background, and this is just kind of the stuff I really love doing. So yeah.
Well, I'm Mike. I had the good fortune to actually kind of be hanging out with Eric when this whole thing kind of catalyzed way back when. So it's fun to see the progression because I moved away from Southern California and have done a lot of other stuff. So it's pretty exciting to see how it's kind of flourished and come to where we're at now. So my background is as a UX designer and kind of a general web consultant. Been doing it for about 20 years, worked in numerous early stage startups and bigger companies alike, and just have kind of a generalist idea of technology on the web. So excited to dive in and see what we're up to here.
That's great. That's really great. Thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. And Richard, I think we could kick this off by you starting asking some questions, fascinating questions to the team.
Absolutely. But I think first of all, I think I would just like to say formally a huge congratulations to Eric, to Mike, to Justin for being the winners of the Rock Engineering Challenge. It's amazing actually today that we're here, because less than a year ago we were sat with the Wevolver team thinking about how we could inspire the engineering community to do some interesting things with OKdo and with the technology that we have. And I think, looking at how the competition progressed over the last few months is just amazing. We had hundreds of entries into this competition. I was fortunate enough to be in the judging panel. We managed to bring those hundreds down to 10 finalists, of which you guys, as part of Constructive Realities, are our #1, winner. So huge congratulations. I think the innovation that you guys brought to this contest is just exceptional. I will say computer vision is a little bit of a pet project for me. So I may have been, one of the judges that had some bias, but actually I think the uniqueness that you brought through the time of flight development solutions that you're looking at, I think the scalability of the application, where this could go in the future, is just, the thing really that stood out for me as I was reading the really in-depth detail actually that you put into your entry, and just talking to the other judges. It wasn't just me. I think everybody on the judging panel, and there were people from Rockchip, there were other entrepreneurs that we work with, all coming from different perspectives. They were really impressed with the depth that you went into, and actually how you breathe life into this project. It was one of the few that we could actually see materializing and making an impact in so many different markets. So yeah, I just want to say huge congratulations. Thank you for participating. And I do have hundreds of questions for you. I'm going to try and decipher them to my top 5 or 6, but yeah, I think that's probably where we should go next. Tassos, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add there around just recognition for Eric and the team of what they've achieved here.
Of course. I mean, you pretty much said everything, Richard, and thanks so much for that. Again, I would like to also to congratulate the team for winning the contest. It was a great challenge to be part of it. And yeah, it's always great seeing such application and entries going live and giving so much details into these challenges, and really looking forward to what the future holds for you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it means a lot to win a competition like this. I mean, it's not overtly, kind of a popularity contest. It's something where what we're looking to do is really quite powerful, and it's important, that this kind of 3D vision and the availability of that 3D vision is something that we all believe really kind of deeply in. And so it's nice to hear that this resonates with the panelists, and then kind of at large as well. So wonderful.
Yeah, it really does, Eric. I mean, we at OKdo, we do specialize in the single board computing space, so that often becomes the platform of innovation, and we see that going lots of different directions with IoT, AIoT, different applications. But I think you're right. This one really did resonate, and it's actually a nice segue into my first question for you, Eric, and the team, and that is just, obviously you stepped into this challenge, you looked at the Rock SBC, you looked at some of the things that you're interested in and that you're working on. How did it come about? Tell us the thought process. Was this something that you had on a shelf that you pulled down for this competition? Is it something that you came up with together around a table in a room? What did that look like, Eric, for you and the team at Constructive Reality?
Yeah, so the kind of the fast version of this is that as as a company, when Justin and I really started getting into the computer vision aspect of our research, time of flight as a technology really kind of bubbled to the top, in part because it's just a really good general 3D system, that it works in a lot of different scenarios. And then kind of as nerds, we got a little hung up on the details of kind of like the magic of time of flight. And we were in a very fortunate position to have met kind of group of people from PMD Technologies, who are, probably one of the world thought leaders in time of flight. And we had originally proposed creating a fusion device to them back in 2020. And so we met them at CES, and we kind of brought them our vision of like, hey, here's like, at the time it was not compute included, it was just, let's build a fusion camera device. And so over the course of 2 years, we worked with them to really figure out what the requirements were, what kind of, how we would do that, what platform we would do that on. And so we actually ran a project where we built the system as a demonstrator for PMD to just get a level set on what it would take to build this type of device. In the course of doing that, we cultivated a number of other very interesting relationships, along the way, and that we found ourselves in a position of doing a lot more research and development than we ever really expected. Not just because it was hard, but because we realized that other companies find this very challenging as well. And so, we all of a sudden were the holder of kind of an interesting area of expertise. And so we started getting signal from companies that were involved in their own research and development projects, big companies with lots of budget, and they're just as lost, as everybody else. And so we started getting involved in doing professional services and doing engineering, doing engineering projects. And, kind of to crunch all of that down, there wasn't a single inspired moment where it happened, but the accumulation of requirements has occurred in a semi-organic way over the period of 2 years, where now we know exactly what we want, right? And it's very clear to us. And it's not just that we've decided and now we have to go build it. We already have a tremendous amount of work done. We have functioning systems, and now it's just about how we really finish that last stage of it and present it to kind of the world, right? And adding Linux to it with a small board computer has a ton of advantages for, for us as a company, for it as a product, and for how accessible this technology can be for, everybody else. So I'm bad at short answers, but I think that's probably as condensed as I can make that.
No, that's brilliant. It's absolutely fascinating, that journey that you've been on. And I think, just listening to what you said, so you started out with that fusion idea that didn't include compute, and then through this competition, you've managed to sort of bring them together in this sort of application demo. What were the challenges, as you sort of went through the project? Were there any challenges that you saw as you brought that compute element in, as you got maybe au fait with the Linux side of things, if you weren't already? What did you sort of see as you went through those steps, Eric and team?
Yeah, there's probably a point I could pass off to Justin to touch on some of these items, but one of the things that really was a big shift change for us is that our first implementation of the Fusion system was, we'll call it an embedded application, right? Where we're using a myriad VPU, very specialist skill set, and the work that Justin had to do to build the pipeline, the depth pipeline and the processing on device was very challenging, right? And then as we started to look at it, and we started to look at the GPUs and small ARM SBCs and how much capacity was available on small ARM SBCs, we started to look at, well, maybe this is actually the right path of moving, staying kind of on an embedded platform, but more user space oriented, where we could start to run things on the GPU. That survey, I'll call it, of figuring out how to build that pipeline and how to test all of the SBCs on the market, I think was a pretty, that was a, it's still ongoing, but that's a bit of an opus unto itself, right? Where, I mean, we have very large matrices of which computers, what GPU they have, how many gigaflops they have for this stage of the pipeline. And there's just an incredible amount of work that Justin put into structuring all that so that now we can look at it and say, where do we want to run? So the benefit that we got out of that is this idea of portability, and that we can pretty much run anywhere now. And so when I look at it, that to me, that's the most impressive part of all of it, is getting through that survey and figuring out how we were going to run everywhere. So.
Yeah, and I'll add to that like, on like a relative level, the GPUs and sub $100 single board computers nowadays are, I mean, they're fantastic, and they're I think they're really going to change a lot of applications like this, because you can just get so much compute out of something relatively small. And really our kind of main issue around that is just getting like, we stay on like the bleeding edge of drivers, we stay on the bleeding edge of kernels, just to make sure that we have full access to the available hardware resources. And once we have the full access to that, we can run these, what I'll call a traditionally computation heavy application with like pretty low levels of CPU usage, and still have, you can still run monitors, you can still run other like GL applications. And yeah, I think that's kind of, it got us out of a kind of hard to work on development platform, and now we're kind of pretty agile in what kind of devices and what kind of platforms we can support.
That's brilliant. Can everyone still hear me okay?
Now we can, yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating. Actually, I think, Justin, you may have written some of the marketing copy in your answer.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely love the piece around the agility, the portability, and then this run everywhere approach. I think you're absolutely on the money there, because I do think, when I read the detail of this project and that scalability I was talking about, the ability to run anywhere does make a big difference in today's market. And yeah, I think you've put some copy together for Hannah and the team to help when we do go to market. I think the other thing I was just going to ask, maybe this is to you still, Justin, is where do you see this going over the next year or two as a technology and a capability? Do you have a view what that might look like over the next 18, 24 months?
So I think the main thing, when you start talking about even kind of hobbyist consumer intro to this hardware, is I feel like kind of right now you have to be willing to dive into like getting the OS set up, getting the driver set up. That's going to get turnkeyed real fast. It's going to be pretty easy just to install kind of the default image and have like your OpenCL drivers, your OpenGL drivers, and have, instant access to all that compute power. And, that's going to be exciting, because that's going to just open up a ton of people, make it, as easy as it can be. I also think that, OpenCL has made it dramatically easier than like traditional OpenGL shaders that are kind of coming in with more of a 3D slant to just get general compute stuff done. And I think, that's going to be kind of a main enabler for people too, to write OpenCL kernels, and then you can test them locally and then run them kind of in this kind of IoT embedded whatever space. And then, I think the transition from doing development on a single board computer and then switching right to a compute module for like productization is a pretty smooth transition, and that's only going to get easier. And I mean, these GPUs are only going to get faster. So it's, I think just as soon as like all that stuff, as it gets easier and easier, it's just going to kind of explode.
In my view of that, I think we are probably still one generation away, like we're one Moore's law cycle here away from pretty much every business problem being able to be supported by a compute module with, you know, vision enabled in this way, and to be able to do the bulk of the work on device, you know. And so now we're kind of at this, it's not so much the inflection point, we're kind of at the intersection where the computers are almost fast enough to do everything we want, right? And by the time we figure that out, they will be, right? So I think the timing is good, right? You know, for this kind of format or architecture change. And, you know, basically from here forward, you know, there's another answer to your question, which is really more about what domains of application and how does this get used. You know, I think that, you know, the software part of this, of just having depth, you know, is great, right? But now you've got a different problem, right? You know, and so the workflows around that is something that was really our original focus as a company, right? And so, you know, to the question of like, where does this go? You know, I think in the next 18 months, it's going to be fairly rudimentary, but it'll be things like 3D scanning, you know, like of just really establishing the core competencies around use cases that really just clearly demonstrate what the technology is capable of doing. And then there's like, you know, on the following side of that, okay, now we've got this persistent 3D information. What are we doing with it? Which becomes much more of a data management, a workflow problem, which is, you know, again, that's the real problem we're trying to get to. We just kind of accidentally found ourselves as camera makers in the course of doing it.
Yeah, but
I think
you actually,
Richard, that's good news. There's like the explosion is yet to happen. You and I still need to work for 20 more years. We can still make our money.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so has this project in any way impacted the direction of your team? So have you been like influenced by this and the technology?
You mean, are you talking about the competition specifically?
Yeah.
You know, I would say that from the point that we were notified that we were finalists, I would say, if anything, my process is constantly trying to line up all the things, right? You know, so there's a new series of opportunities for us as entrepreneurs that emerges with this. And so I would say around the time that we were informed that we were finalists, then I kind of started putting some mental elbow grease against how am I going to line this up with other, you know, other opportunities that we have. And so in that, you know, in that frame, absolutely, for sure. I'll admit, you know, the submission itself was a little fire and forget, right? You know, just in terms of how busy we are, right? So Justin, well, I think, found the competition and said, hey, you know, like we should do this. And we created a document for it. We sat on it for a month. And like all great things, you know, it happens in the last 2 hours, right? So the actual, you know, impact to get to submission wasn't really such a big deal for us, you know. And then, you know, we submitted it and we're like, hey, we'll see, you know, right? So and then the finalists, that's when we started really looking at.
Yeah. Okay. So now you have
and
to
we can talk about some of those other opportunities. I just don't know if this is the, you know, if the introductory call is the kind of the right venue to jump into all the other connections that I could see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and there may be some help with in other areas of your business, right? But now you have to. Now we're both committed, so at least we are for sure.
This is
So
the art
like,
of the deal, right? This is the
yeah.
art of
What
the
are
deal.
you do on the whole implementation and go to market? So now that you have this and there is a path towards development and with our support, right? So how do you see the next months as you go into the marketplace?
So just our plan of record right now was that we have, you know, in this line. So the discussion we have in flight at this moment is we're talking about the compute included part, right? We actually have 2 other products that we'd actually planned on releasing first, right? And that those are just, we'll call them interposers. So they're basically just the camera board, right? And the real objective of doing that was to basically just land something where we could get a VGA class time of flight running on something that is a Raspberry Pi class computer that uses the GPU, right? Like, so that, like, as a combined atomic delivery, that's the thing. Our plan has been that we were going to release that on, let's just say, as a crowd-enabled release, right? In the late June, early July timeframe, right? What we were not considering prior to kind of the competition results here was that we weren't really planning on doing a compute included as part of that. So there's a third rail that I think now becomes a more compelling and interesting option for us to discuss about now that we have, Wevolver, OKdo, RS Group, our partners with PMD and Infineon and kind of some of the other kind of companies that they're affiliated with. Now, what is the opportunity for us to actually kind of squeeze this thing a little bit harder and look at how we actually just, kind of increase the scope of that effort, because we definitely now have the opportunity to generate the interest and attention around what we're doing. Right. So for us as a smaller team without something like this going on as an organic, marketing exercise, is just like, we don't have the bandwidth to do all that. And we were going to keep it small. And I think the real opportunity that opens up in this conversation is that I think we can really look to explore how big we can make it. Right. And I think including the compute included option for doing that, I think that it's clearly the right thing to do. Right. This whole group agrees, right? So
yeah, it's massively exciting, Eric. That roadmap of just actually learning about what you were planning, with that crowd sort of sourced camera board in that June-July timeframe. Then I think there's a path for us to work through all of that, and it's really interesting. PMD, I'm not so sure, but the likes of Infineon are huge partners for us as well. So I think there's some pieces that we can tie together, which will make a lot of sense on that roadmap, which is quite exciting. Probably needs a bit more conversation than this call, but I think we're all ears on that, Eric.
Yeah, and at the risk of kind of diverging as well, there's another connection point here in terms of like the value that the RS Group provides, kind of, I won't say from the shadows, but just like as a kind of an arm's length party here, because, one of the transformational aspects of my cultivation as an engineer was the availability and use of Design Spark Mechanical. So I have been in Design Spark Mechanical probably for 5 to 6 hours a day since 2018, right? And so, this tool and the capability that it's provided us is also an important part of that conversation. I think there's probably a standalone opportunity to just look at that as well. So.
No, that's wonderful to hear, Eric. So, OKdo, we sit as part of the RS Group. Design Spark is also part of the RS Group, and OKdo and Design Spark are very close. In fact, both of those are the teams that I look after. So to hear you talk about the Design Spark CAD tool in that way is fantastic. And we can absolutely, there's a role for RS and Design Spark in the future of our relationship through you winning this contest, without a doubt. And I'm excited to sort of explore what that could look like. I can absolutely tell you, just like with Wevolver, the Design Spark community are going to be very engaged around the result and you guys winning. So I think that's going to open up a lot of engagement there as well. So yeah, that's noted. And we'll definitely follow up in the right way, Sander, Hannah and I, on what we can do there. Brilliant. Brilliant. I have lots of other questions, but shall I hand over? Hannah, do you have any questions for the team? Or Tassos, back to you.
Yeah, for sure. It's been really enjoyable seeing you discussing very engineering stuff. Also an engineer myself, and I always love listening to such things. But since we have already mentioned that I have been running challenges, it would be really nice to hear from you, Eric, and the rest of the team, any tips you might have, for example, for future participants in such challenges. It would be really nice to see your approach to the challenge, how you drafted your application and everything, and what would you advise potential future entrants in such challenges?
Sure. So I'll make an assertion about what I believe the panelists pulled out of our submission, right? Which was we have a cool thing, we have we had a video and a few nice visuals, some renders. So one part of this is that I call it the blender gap, right? Where, so many companies just, pay for renderings to, do stuff, but, for large part, people require their imaginations to be filled with imagery, right? And so things that you can do that actually represent a further state of than where you are, but do that, well, I think are things that are valuable, right? So learning how to use design tools and being able to figure out how to get things out of a design tool or into rendering, or if you just go on Fiverr and pay somebody to do it, those things I think are useful. Now, whether they're not the kind of the high value item inside there, and if I were to kind of reflect on where I believe, we got traction with the panelists, is that, this is a business for us, right? We have absolutely been thinking a lot about where this will be used, how it will be used, the scale of that, and the economics of what this looks like as a product, right? And so there's this kind of, I'll say back to basics, but just this fundamental kind of design around, okay, well, you've got all these pieces and it's a cool, nerdy toy. That's great. But, like, what's the market for that? And where is that really going to use? And in this type of technology, these are enabling technologies. And so you don't necessarily have to be able to say X, Y, and Z, and this is the scope, but really be able to articulate, right, like how and where and in what markets, that these items will be used, so that you could attach that to some minimal idea of what scale you can kind of attain. Because even for us, a small success could be 10,000 units a year, right? A big success could be 50 million units a year, right? So the spread on these things, and it's hard to kind of communicate that, and when you try and bundle it down in the context of a competition, and so trying to keep it light, but keep it focused around like that, creating this vision that there is at least this into the tens of thousands.
Do the 50 million.
What's that?
Do the 50 million.
Well, I mean, now, sure, we're going to talk about that, but in the context of that, the believability gap there of like, oh yeah, you say you're going to do 50 million of them. Well, it's like, well, if I say we're going to do 10,000 of them, that actually sounds attainable, right? And so how do you not go from 0 to 1, but from 1 to 10,000? In this type of competition, I think is probably important. More important than showing how you're going to sell 50 million.
Yeah,